James Kennedy on the show tonight, Central Scouting for the Alliance, OHL Central Scouting. I've known James for quite a few years. He was a coach in minor hockey for the London Junior Knights and at the time it was Elgin Middlesex Chiefs. This guy knows his stuff. He's been around a long time. A lot of passion for kids, a lot of passion for seeing, guys, prosper, to become better. Obviously, a different realm now that you've gone from coaching to scouting. I just kind of want to touch base about, give us a little background of your coaching when you were doing minor hockey, where and what.
Yeah, sure. So I started, would have been the 07-08 season with the 92. At the time, they called it minor midget AAA team.
Yep.
So my first year coaching ever in any type of hockey, minor hockey, was minor midget. AAA. Yeah. So
that doesn't happen.
No, no. And what had happened was there's a gentleman by the name of Dave Partridge, who unfortunately is no longer with us. He had a boy who was a 93, but he wanted to coach again minor midget AAA, and so he moved down he would drive down to London. Didn't really know anybody in the area, but became a coach and needed some help behind the bench. And I had just randomly been out helping the Junior B Nationals that year and kind of ran into Chuck Dufton. And I actually interviewed for...
Old Chucky.
Yeah, I interviewed for a spot on his bench when he was coaching the major midgets. But he said, you know what, you probably need some more experience. Excuse me, but I'll get you in touch with John Calderozzi.
Johnny.
John was running the...
Legend.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, running the Junior Knights at the time. So John just kind of forwarded me out to Dave. I met with Dave, had an interview, and I got the job. And
wow.
so I coached the defense that year. And when we were a middle of the pack team. That was back when, to get to the OHL Cup, there was a lot more American teams involved or coming out to play in the tournament.
Really? So there was I know BK hockey plays now.
Yeah.
But there's not that many, right? That's the only one. So back when you did it, who was coming into that?
Victory Honda, Little Caesars.
Big namers.
Cleveland Barons were a team.
Cleveland Barons.
Yeah. So again, I started helping out, and after the team was picked, but we had two more players we needed to pick with that team, and one of them ended up being Tommy Hughes.
Tommy Hughes, wow.
So Dave and I went to the practice, and he said, listen, he goes, and so I'm following Dave around because I really don't know much. He's like, no, you stand over here and watch, and you tell me who the two guys you like are, and I'll stand over here and we'll talk after. Well, I picked up, it was Tommy Hughes, and the boy ended up being our captain. But anyways, yeah, so it was a great experience. And it was just Dave and I, and we had a goalie guy that was kind of there when he could be.
Yep.
So it was, I am going to tournaments and I'm coaching against Rick Vive, guys that I watched when I was a kid, right? Yeah. So I go home and, call my brother, call my dad, be like, listen, I was coaching against Rick Vive and I got to meet him. So it was kind of a bit of a whirlwind, to start, but Dave was a hard coach. Dave was the type of guy.
He was a hard ass.
He was, yeah. He was a hard ass. He was the type of guy that was very strict. But I learned a lot from him.
Did the guys like playing for him though? Was it tough?
Yeah, I think some of them really struggled under him. Yeah. And Dave had some unique ways of doing things, right or wrong. He wouldn't tell goalies who were playing until the day of, and not even the day of, before warmups. And what he would say to that, he would say, listen, he goes, I'm going to play you. He goes, but you need to be ready too. So regardless of the situation, he goes, because if goalie A goes in and doesn't do well,
you're going in.
Well, and you're going in, but you got to be ready. So if you don't come to the rink prepared, or if you're eating fries or pizza, or whatever they're doing, right? We need you both to be ready, right?
That's hilarious.
So it was different, but it was a great experience. And what I was trying to say earlier is that was back when, to get to the OHL Cup, you had to go to the Alliance Finals. It wasn't like it is now. You win one series and you're going to the OHL Cup, right?
Right,
so
right.
It was
much more difficult.
Yeah, it was a long season. We ended up beating Sun County in the first round in Game 7, and then we beat Windsor in the second round in Game 7 in overtime, and then we ended up playing Brantford, and Brantford beat us. And Dave tried really, really hard to get us an invite, because it's an invite, obviously, to the OHL Cup. But unfortunately, there was a lot of really good American hockey players that year, or American teams, I should say, coming up. Excuse me. And so they got in, and unfortunately we didn't. But again, Dave, I learned a lot from him, because the next 3 years...
100%, yeah.
Yeah, the next 3 years, I was an assistant, and that was the first years with the 94s. So, Brett Wolichka and Josh Brown, who's playing in the NHL now.
NHL.
And Dave Robinson was the head coach of that team, so I went and interviewed with them. And a little more laid back. but really into the system. So I learned a lot. So I took a lot from what I learned from, the
Those
first coach.
guys,
And you kind of do that, right? You just you're like a sponge, you soak it in. And the first couple of years I was coaching, I never ran any drills. I just kind of sat back and watched, and the one thing I was always kind of nervous because you're like, if I go out there and run a drill and it doesn't go right, these kids are just going to look at me going, this guy's
he doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah, this guy's a fool, right? So I was always a bit timid. And then, after working with Dave for 3 years, you get comfortable. And like I said, so I worked with him for 3 years. And then, the next year I went to Kevin Gardner, who was the VP, still is the VP of the Junior Knights. And I said, I want to coach a team. I'm ready. He had asked me the year before to be a coach, but I wanted to go back and continue to learn. I didn't feel I was ready.
You knew you need another year.
Yeah. And you see a lot of things, right? And the last thing you want to do is not be prepared or not be confident
100%.
in your abilities, right?
Yeah.
So I felt very confident at that point. So I actually coached the 01 group, Major Adam AA. And I remember I went into the interview with the Junior Knights, and I'm sitting there going, I'm going to coach. I want to coach one of these older teams. I want to coach minor midget. I've done minor midget, and I think they're just kind of me like, no,
no, you're starting here.
Yeah. You're and luckily it worked out because it was a phenomenal age group in London.
100%.
Right?
They've had some good ones over the years for sure.
Yeah. So I started with the double A's, 01s, and we had one double A team that year too. So it also helped.
How'd you guys do?
We did great. I mean, we ended up losing in the semifinals at the OHFs in Kitchener.
Really? So you guys did good there.
Yeah, but my first tryout with that group, I had another young guy help me out, and we looked down the sheet, and we're getting the sheets in from the Junior Knights for all the kids trying out, and I'm like, there's a lot of kids here. And then I show up the day of, and I've got Kevin Gardner down there. He's like, listen, he goes, normally you got 2 time slots. You got an hour and a half for tryouts because you got so many kids. We've added a third because you got 165 kids.
Wow. Is that typical? Like, would they get that today or no?
I don't think that's today.
No,
I don't know what it was, but because I don't know if it was because there's only one double A team that year. We had
prices of hockey equipment was down at that time. Probably.
I'm sure it was too. The price of ice
now.
too. Yeah. So here I am, my first year as a head coach, running my own tryout. And I'm looking down, and I've got 165 kids.
Wow! But
what I did before, and I did a lot of background, and I knew the 2, double A teams, and I knew, the triple A team a little bit then, and their tryouts had already happened. So there's a couple kids that they had cut that had come down. I just did my research, right, and knew all the kids.
That's one thing I do know about you. You're into that, man.
Yeah. So I pre-scouted these kids while they were still playing because obviously when the Junior Knights announce coaches, it's usually a couple weeks before the end of a season.
Right. You wanted to get a handle on it before.
Right. Yeah. So we got down to the 16, 17 kids that we picked that year, and we had a great year. And then from there, I interviewed again, and I got the AAA team. So that AAA team, consisted of Mason Howard, Ryan Suzuki.
Oh, that was the 2001 team, yeah.
Yeah, so it was a very talented team, and I know I'm leaving a bunch of kids' names off of it. I mean, I think ultimately they had 14 out of 17, 18 kids drafted in the OHL.
That's insane.
Yeah, so and I got really lucky. I got a couple young coaches that came on with me.
Who was with you that year?
Brendan Heffernan.
Yeah.
And Aaron Darch. And Darchy was still playing Junior B. With the Nationals at the time.
So he was doing both.
He was doing both, yeah. And I don't know if it was our minor or major Pee-wee where they won the championship, right? Sutherland Cup.
It's funny, like now you're a scout, but back then you knew you needed to kind of, which, listen, you're hopping into, like my son's coaching now. He's helping Danny Severett minor midgets. So he's learning too. I told him to get in there because, hockey's kind of like done for him. He injured himself over in Europe and stuff. But I said to him, getting out to watch and scout and, like what you do, you were doing that then, right, and now you're doing it now. So it's kind of like, it's like, how, So for me, I'm like going, I know because I had dealt with you before. You guys were looking to bring Mason up that 1 year, and you guys had your team of guys. Breckelman's was there in that too with you, and I think Horvat, and you guys were out watching players and making sure if you're going to take a guy that was ready. And but I know the system sometimes it's hard. Like there's a lot of rules and boards you got to go through, so it can get challenging. But then, so you did minor midget in London, the 2001 group.
No, I just did them up to minor Bantam.
Minor Bantam, okay.
Yeah, so then I went in to talk to them about doing the minor midget team, but they already had the Benedetti brothers, and they were kind of established.
Yeah, they were there for a while.
Minor midget coaches, and I know Greg, fairly well, and I was like, I don't want to take your job. And then the opportunity came up with the 2000 group in Elgin.
And who was on that team? Who was?
Well,
any names, good ones on there?
Well, we were supposed to have Eric Guest was supposed to be, but they moved over. We had West Dobbin on that team.
West Dobbin.
Jake Murray. Jake Murray got sick during that year, actually, unfortunately. Ty Glover, who's now playing in the Pittsburgh Penguins farm system. Yeah. So, unfortunately, we had one of those years that was really funny. There was a lot of the parents from that group that are on the board member, and unfortunately, some just didn't get along, and there was kids moving in and out, and it was kind of my first year looking at minor midget, and you're going, my gosh, like there's just so much player movement, right? A lot, yeah. And we ended up having maybe 25 kids try out, and we had Jake Murray had gotten hurt. 25. Yeah. Murray had gotten hurt. Spencer Lapointe, who was our captain, it was a good little defenseman. He was hurt. He had concussion. There was another player by the name of Matt Bowman who had 3 or 4 concussions the year before and unfortunately never played again. He just had too many concussions back to back. Yeah. So it was one of those things with that team. But you know what? We did fairly well. And then just before playoffs started, we got the news that Jake was ill. He had cancer. He had a tumor up in his sinus.
You know what? I didn't even really follow up with it. Is he okay now?
He's from what I've understood, he's had a couple different bouts with it. Obviously he went to Hamilton. He played a bit in Hamilton, and then I think he was on the Western Mustangs roster. I'm not sure how many games he played. Right. But the last I heard, his health wise, he's doing a lot better. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, big transition. So, tell us how you got in with the OHL. I mean, I know your background. I know you're a sharp guy with this stuff. And I'm sure it's quite detailed. We'll get into that process in a minute. But how did you just apply? And then there's a big process, obviously.
Yeah, so I actually sent my boss, Daryl Woodley now, I just sent him an email back in, would have been June of that year, after I picked my team. And I just said, listen, Daryl, I said, I know the 2001 age group very well. I'm going to be coaching at Nelgan this year. Anything, I wasn't essentially... I was applying for a job, but I didn't really ask for one. I said, listen, I know the age group. If you need any help with anything,
let me know.
Let me know. And he emailed me back within an hour and said, listen, we've got a guy in that area, but if something should come up, I'll keep your resume on file. And I said, okay, fair enough. And I talked to some other GMs around the league and just kind of, threw my name in the hat and just kind of said, well, we're waiting for something to happen. And then about a week before the Titans tournament started, Daryl sent me an email just randomly at work and said, listen, do you still want the position? We had another guy that in your area that stepped down. And so I had some phone conversations with him, met with him for a nice interview at the Titans just before we were getting ready to play a game. And then I was offered the position. It was funny though. I was offered the position and I literally left the meeting with Daryl and I walked down the hallway and I run into a guy I scouted, well, I didn't scout with, but I coached against. He's like, oh, congratulations. And he was scouting for Saginaw.
He already knew.
I'm like, he already knew. He goes, oh yeah. He goes, Daryl did his background work on you. Talked to 2 or 3 different people. And I know we talked to Rob Simpson about me. Rob
was with the Knights?
Yeah. Because Rob and I had done some work together when Rob was getting his high performance coach. He mentored me. And he had helped me along the way. And then when I got my HP1, there was a lot of questions and stuff I had for him. It was a pretty difficult process, but he helped me along the way too.
So do you need the HP1 to be a scout for the OHL?
No, you needed to coach. Now, I'm not sure if they changed it or not, but at the time you needed to coach major bantam, minor midget, AAA hockey.
Right. For any particular time frame or?
Yeah, no, you had to have it. And then to coach junior B, you have to have it now too as well, right?
Really?
And so, so it was 2 weekends in Kitchener. The first weekend was in the summer. The air conditioner broke at Conestoga College. So there was there was 30 or 40 coaches in there, and it was hot.
Not good.
And some of it was really good. Some of it was a bit dry. We had...
I've heard that.
We had Steve Spock come in, and he was one of the presenters.
Very smart guy.
Very, very smart guys. He went over special teams, very open, a lot of information. And then after your 2 weekends are done, you go home, and I would say it was an assignment with 10 questions. Had to do 2 book reports. Had to read 2 books, do 2 book reports. Had to draw out, I would say, probably close to, when I look back on it, probably close to 100 drills. You have to draw out and write descriptions for. Yeah.
And very detailed.
Very detailed. And then you get someone that comes out and watches your game and then watches your practice. So I ended up getting Don McKee, who was the one guy at the time who was basically running the HP1. So I get him.
So he came out to watch and...
So he came out to watch a practice, and then he came in and sat with me and graded me on it. And then he came to a game and did the exact same thing, and then I got my certificate.
So before you started coaching, did you play minor hockey in that too?
Yeah, I never played at a high level.
Nothing high level, but
no. I always this is my excuse. So when I was playing my first year Pee Wee, I broke my wrist. Luckily, I'm left-handed, but I broke my right one pretty bad, and they probably should have pulled it. You know where they reset the
bone? Yeah.
They did. They just kind of wrapped a cast around it. So it's never been
That's
the
what they
same.
did back then.
So that's my excuse to why I didn't go anywhere, Spiro.
You know what? You can have that. We'll take
That's
it.
right. That's right.
But, you know, to get a job at this level, like, that's amazing. Like, for a guy that, you know, and listen, I look back, and I know this is old school. Some of the young guys watching won't remember Pat Burns, but a guy who was a cop. He never played hockey, but was an amazing coach.
Yep.
You know, obviously, those days are a lot different than today. I think this generational gap, like in terms of the way that, like you mentioned, those old school guys, the yellers, the screamers, that's gone now.
Oh, totally.
You got a little bit left, maybe, not as much, but it's a different type of kids. The game's a lot faster, and I'm sure you've seen the transition.
Oh, for sure.
Over the last even 5 years, how much faster it's gotten, how much more guys are getting in shape and having to stay on top of it. Like it's a year-round kind of job.
Yep.
You know, this is what everybody's kind of been waiting for. I know on this podcast is like, okay, take us through. I saw you at the rink the other day. I went to go watch Elgin Minor Midgets versus London.
Yep.
The U16. And I saw you up there. I was like, oh, this is early, right? Guys are already at it. Like, is it typical to start this early for you guys? Or
I do. I like to.
So you can start whenever you want.
Yeah,
Nobody says, yeah, you got to start on this day.
You really want to start the first tournament prior to COVID. The Titans tournament, which I was at this past weekend, it was after the long weekend, after Labor Day weekend, and even league play has all kind of been shifted to start in early October now.
Right.
I like to get out and watch preseason. It really starts the year before. We have a scout that works with us at OHL Central Scouting.
So you're doing Major Bantam.
Yeah, he what he does is Chris Marchese. He was 94, played with Erie, and then I think he played with Windsor. So he goes out prior. So he'll be watching the 09.
So I'm going to stop you here,
Sure.
and we'll go back to that. When Mason was playing, they didn't have that.
Oh, okay.
Or did they? Or did they not? Do you know?
They might have had that.
Okay,
I'm not sure.
okay.
It depends on. Chris wasn't around at that point.
Right, man, had somebody else.
They probably They
Because I'd always thought I heard from, you know, I know quite a few people too, was they didn't start that until, like, a scout would only come in, you know, like, let's say if a minor midget team was playing and the major banners were before, they might stop in early and take a quick peek. No, it's probably been around, right?
Yeah, and there's a lot of, I mean, you know, I was standing with a couple of scouts at last night's junior nights here on Perth game, and we were talking about kids that were how they played last year, right?
Okay, so this has been around for a bit.
Yeah.
So they're starting. They'll have a guy go. He's looking at major bantams, and he'll watch the whole, like, one guy in the alliance or more.
Well, one guy for us at Central.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of teams that have a bantam. Will have a bantam scout themselves.
Okay.
Yeah, and they'll just kind of go out and watch the tournaments and whatnot.
And they won't give you anything until the next year, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure you guys will meet before the next season starts, and you'll go, okay, these are the guys that kind of stood out at this point.
Yeah.
But, you know as well as I know, sometimes guys stand out at that point, and you're like, okay, these guys are unbelievable. And all of a sudden, minor midget comes along, and it's like, whoa, what happened to this guy?
Oh, for sure. It happens every year.
It happens every year.
Yeah, so we call it our finder's list.
The finder's list. Okay.
Yeah, and we'll look and we'll have a rating beside them, and it'll usually say finder's list FL. And then we take a look at them, and we you know, just kind of see if we think they'll be drafted this year or where we kind of want to rank them. And again, you're right, though, it changes. It fluctuates.
It changes, right? Because, I mean, I think, you know, 1 year in hockey, like, or even in general, in any sport, even in school, your mind, some guys, like, can get sharper, start to understand things a little bit better, and others maybe have had more speed and explosiveness and were able to get away with it at the earlier age groups. But then all of a sudden you're like, okay, you know, it's like you're like, you can skate and be really fast, but the puck can move faster than the player.
Oh, yeah.
That old saying, right? Yeah. But so kind of take us through what I was always very curious about was, and I got some good questions for you, but how does it start? You go to the rink. You got this piece of paper. Is there a process that they've taught you how to do, or is it your own process?
Well, it's really just kind of going there and identifying who I think will be drafted, who I think has the potential to be drafted, and then I'll write reports on them.
So you create this first list.
Yep.
It's big, I'm sure. It's like massive, right?
Yeah. You
How many players are we talking about?
Well, I like to go in and do in a game. I like to look at and really 4 or 5 on each team.
So each time you go, you're looking at 4 or 5 guys.
Yeah, on each team.
Okay, yeah, because it'd be way too much to do.
Oh yeah, and I mean I watch for the Alliance. I mean, especially being here with London and Elgin and all the teams coming in. I mean, I watch the Alliance teams like 20 times almost each season, right?
So you'll go out, you'll go, you'll give everybody a shot. Obviously, you'll be like,
for
okay,
sure.
there's 18 guys in this roster. I'm doing these guys this time. Next time, I'm doing these guys. And then, like you said, you'll watch 20 some odd games, and it'll just be like a process of elimination of consistency.
That's a big part of it, yeah. And sometimes I would never say you're going to scratch someone's name off, but you're like, okay, maybe I don't think he's going to get drafted. Then he does something come playoff time.
Yeah, so it happens.
It happens all the time. Yeah,
because you always hear obviously the further the team goes, the better chances of getting drafted.
It helps. It helps. However, there's the scouts work so hard now, and guys that I scout with, and guys that scout for teams. And there's the videos out there now, and I personally don't scout with video. I find it a little difficult.
It's not your style.
No, it's just not my style. I'd rather be in there in person, and I tell kids this too. I'm watching a kid when his team gets scored on.
What's he doing?
If I'm focusing on, even if he's on the bench, I'll focus on him, right? Or if he's on the ice, or vice versa when his team scores, right? Because I want to get to know a player that way, right? But there's so many scouts out there working, and like I said, working really hard. So they're going everywhere. And you hear about Mark Hunter, and I can attest to that. I mean, I'll go to a tournament, and I'm there at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Hunter's there.
And Mark Hunter's there. Mark Hunter was there at the Titans Friday for most of the day, and then he drives back to a home game in London, and then you see him Saturday morning back there again, right?
Yeah, he's like the Energizer Bunny. Like he's just like a machine like that.
I know him from London, and I work technically for all 20 teams, but I mean, they're hardworking.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. I worked for those guys for, 4 or 5 years, and Mark and Dale too.
Yeah.
These guys farm, they go scouting, they got their own hockey organization that they're after, one of the biggest and best in the business. But like you said, if you want to be the best, it's the same thing I tell guys, in the weight room, or if they want to get faster, this is what you need to do. So now break down the categories. Like it was interesting. You just said, I'm watching what that player does when he scores. I'm not just watching how skilled he is.
Yeah.
Tell me the categories that are involved. I would assume, I'm not sure if you guys find out change room conduct. In that, you talk with coaches.
You'll talk with
coaches.
coaches.
Will you go to that extent?
You can talk to coaches. Teams do a little bit more of that. They'll do a little bit more of the background. But I will. I actually just sent an email out to all the coaches yesterday. All 11 Alliance coaches, introducing myself, and I'll go down and talk to them throughout the year. But there's obviously. Skating is one of the skill sets we look at, obviously.
Yeah.
I use, it was Rocco Tullio that said this to me.
Oh, Rocco, yeah.
Yeah, I coached against him.
Great guy.
Yeah, Ty was playing up when I was coaching the 01s.
Windsor.
Ty always played up in Windsor, yeah. So Rocco would always go by head, heart, and hands. So obviously head is hockey IQ, and then heart is,
And there's a guy who, I don't even know if he played hockey, but I don't even know if he played at high level, but very wealthy dude, but sharp. Very sharp guy. This guy's sharp. His son was Mason's age group.
Yep.
And he got to play up a year and stuff. So we got to go to tournaments and kind of sit with him. And he's pulling with his Bentley, but never brag. No,
very humble.
Very humble.
Yeah, very humble. I sent him an email or a message on Twitter the other day because he's now part ownership of.
He got Ottawa, so he's in
Just
there.
congratulate him, and within 5 minutes, thank you very much. And very humble. Very
that's the first time I've heard of it right there.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to do the same.
Yeah, very nice guy. Very nice guy.
And so there's another guy who puts a lot of time into his
for
club.
sure. Yeah.
And if you go like Dylan Rubrick, who I have plays in so when he got exchanged over to Oshawa, I asked Dylan. I said, "Hey, what's it like over there?" And he goes, "Like pro."
That facility. Have you ever been in the facility?
No, I haven't.
You got to go in there. Yeah, we did a tour in there with the 01s when I was with Major Bantam or Minor Bantam with them. Sorry. And then I think it was the 2001 Elgin team, and we did tours in there. And again, Rocco was like, "No, come in."
Unbelievable.
And
he's always like that.
Yeah, Hunt, the GM Hunt, he took us through and did a spiel and showed us some video, and it's top notch there.
No, Rocco is there to win.
Yep,
he's there to win, and you know what, Ottawa got a good partner there for sure. Out of that.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you know what? Did they break down the percentages or anything like that of what he got, or didn't say?
No, I didn't say. No,
yeah, because he was trying to get in with like Ryan Reynolds, I think.
I heard that,
group.
and then he kind of shifted,
and then they shifted with some other group now. But yeah, so then we're gonna kind of slide back. So you're not just looking for, skating, shooting, game sense. It's hey, you got scored on, you slapped your stick on the ice. You're one of those guys that kind of just has bad body language.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
That can affect the guy for sure, right? Because
Yep.
I mean, and I know all the top teams that win in championships have to buy into the team concept.
Have to. Yep.
So it doesn't matter whether you're at work or in the locker room or playing for a team or whatever we do, because I'm sure you have another job. There's gonna be days where it's shit, and
Yep.
and you got to be able to keep your cool.
Yep.
Your boss gonna shit on you. You got to be able to keep your cool, and you got to be able to absorb information. So I've learned this. I've been through it a bunch of times, not at your level, but I've seen it, and because I've been around so long to do this. And I remember, being in the room with Mark Hunter and Dale Hunter, and that was one of the big questions, like, what's he like in the locker room, right? So you get all this information now, A, B, C, D, E, F, and then you keep going all year. And now there's scouts in other areas, like outside of Ontario.
Yep.
They're doing the same for Central Scouting.
Yep.
How often do you guys meet and look at this whole entire list and go, hey, okay, I got these guys, I got these guys, and I got these guys. What are the regions?
Right. So there's obviously the Alliance, then there's the GTHL, then there's OHL, and then there's North, and then there's Ottawa, which Ottawa's back with U16 now. They're not doing
Yep.
U16, 18. Then we've got a Pittsburgh, New Jersey scout, and then we've got a Michigan guy. And our first list really gets compiled put together, at the Silver Stick. So we all together meet and we all kind of...
So that's kind of the first, okay, let's meet up, see what you got, and you got.
So I have my own, we each
Yep.
have our own personal list through RinkNet, is a company that everybody kind of, all the scouts use, right? I believe even NHL guys use it. And so we're doing our player reports, and weekly I'll update my list. I update it after every game. Because things change, right? A player may have a
100%.
great game, he may not have as great game, so you kind of want to fluctuate that list. And I always do my reports. I did my Titans report on Sunday, so I got home from the Titans late Saturday evening. Hung out with the family for a bit. The next day I got up, did some yard work, and finished my report. So beautiful, I got to do it outside, right?
Oh yeah.
And then yesterday again, I went to the Knights game, the junior Knights game, and then when I go home tonight after
Do a report.
I'll do my report. Right?
Will we spend like an hour on that, or like?
Yeah. I'll probably do about 8 players tomorrow between here on Perth and London. It was a good game, right?
And like, how many hours a week do you think that you? Because what do you do for a regular job?
Computer printers, copiers.
Okay, so you do that.
Yeah.
And then this is another job that you get paid to do.
Yep.
But how many hours? Like, would it be roughly?
If you look at last week, it was a lot because I was away in Toronto from basically Thursday, right? Thursday evening.
The whole
all
week?
All the way.
So you get to get off work from your regular job.
I use a lot of vacation days, right?
Yeah.
So I use a lot of vacation days. So
I commend you guys for that.
Yeah.
I'm in business, and I know you leave for a week and you shut down, you lose some money, right? But at least you have that luxury.
Yeah, and on a given week, without tournaments, October's pretty busy because we have the Wendy Dufton, that's this weekend too, right? So starting Thursday, we'll start going to games all the way through till Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah.
But generally, the junior Knights play every Monday night. Elgin Middlesex Canucks are, Saturday or Sunday.
Sunday.
Huron Perth plays out of Stratford. That's Friday, so you usually go to that. Depending on how good of a team Brantford is,
You go to that.
I'll go to that,
Yeah.
which is an hour or so, right? So, but it's the Dufton this weekend, and then in November it's the Silver Stick, and then the Alliance has their own showcase.
So first tournament, Dufton. You're
Titans.
still there. Sorry, Titans.
Yep.
You're scouting. Then you go Dufton. You're scouting. Then you go. Then you're starting to get some, like, let's say, general information on these guys. At this point, it's general, right?
Yep.
Unless you already know that. I'm sure there's. You guys sometimes get tipped off because people talk, like they come in the gym.
Oh, for
how's
sure.
that guy there? And he's like, oh, he's unbelievable. Like,
For
I'm
sure,
sure you
yeah.
hear rumblings.
Yeah, for sure.
So you take a look at that guy, but as a player, covering those categories, the consistency is important.
And the work ethic.
And the work ethic.
Work ethics, it's a big thing for me, and I think it's a
Huge.
big thing for a lot of
Up
scouts.
and down the ice,
Yeah.
200-foot game.
Yep.
And I know, talking to Mark Hunter, he said to me, I talked to Mark Hunter and Peter DeBoer, who coaches in
Yep.
the NHL. He's a buddy of mine there. And it's like, Mark goes, skill, skating, but he's got to have this,
Yep.
compete level. Nazem Kadri style.
Yep.
Then, who was it? Peter DeBoer said to me, I look for can a guy break the puck out of his own end? Can they get to the neutral zone? Because usually when they get to the neutral zone end, he goes, I leave them alone.
Yeah.
It's such a skill to do
Oh,
that.
yeah.
You know that as well as I do, especially when they're younger ages. Sometimes you're like, okay, as a coach, you're like going, okay, this guy's pinching down, so I'm going to pop it off the glass. I've told the D to do that, not doing it. And all of a sudden, because you could break somebody up for a breakaway,
Yeah.
it doesn't, like, some of these things are, like, they don't sound complicated, but the game's so fast.
Oh, it is, yeah.
Right? Only certain guys can do it really,
Yes.
really, really well.
Exactly, yeah.
But have you, like, so is there guys that are, not everybody's on the list, I would assume, by middle of the season.
No.
Right?
No.
Does somebody ever pop out and go, this guy's really picking it up? You'll catch him.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
It happens, right?
All the time, yeah. I mean, I always tell kids, never give up. Never give up on your season, regardless.
No way.
And for me, I do about halfway through the year, and I'll do it at the end. I'll look at stats. I hardly ever look at stats because
I'm so glad you said that. That was actually my next question.
yeah, because you want to what I went and watched London and Sun County play last year, and nothing against Sun County, they were a weak team.
Yeah, they were
and
weaker.
London beat them 13-2. So there there's a player on there that had a hat trick, right? And I'm like, okay, that's great. You can score against Sun County, who's not a very strong team,
Right.
But I want to see you do that against, is it, I don't know,
Elgin
Waterloo
or
one of the
whoever.
other top
Yeah,
teams
yeah.
in the alliance, right? So, it's great that you can still score and produce and do all those things, but I want to see it or at tournaments, when you're playing the Marlies or the Junior Canadians.
Right.
Or this year, Vaughn's one of the top teams to beat.
Again,
right?
so Vaughn's good again.
So yeah, so I'll remember, a couple years ago I was scouting, and Brantford had a pretty good team. They had a boy by the name of McCallum. He's on Peterborough. Actually, just scored a couple goals on the weekend for the Petes, and they were playing that team that Shane Wright was on, Don Mills. So Shane
Don Mills
Wright
Flyers, yep,
and
yep.
Brant Clark. And it was in rink number 2 for the Silver Stick in Whitby. And it's the coldest rink in the arena, but you couldn't move. It was so packed.
Just jammed.
Oh, and it was a great game. And I learned so much about those players from Brantford because that's my area to cover, right?
Yeah.
And just how determined they were. And the McCallum kid is not the biggest kid. He's not the thickest kid.
A great compete level.
A great compete level. And that's the same thing, too. I got a lot of friends that are Leaf fans. And I remember when Easton Cowan got drafted this past year, and they're like, Who
is this guy?
I'm like, no.
Here you go, eh?
I went to either was going to the games or I watched every game of that playoff, especially in the finals against Peterborough. And I know he missed a couple games because he was sick, but there's a kid that just hounds the puck.
Oh, he's on top of
And
it.
he's relentless.
He's like, he'll bite your ankles off.
We'll look at him against, I don't know if it was Ottawa or whatever preseason game they played where he got the breakaway and then he had the penalty shot. And it's just his work ethic.
So it's his work ethic, but what does he do so well on a scouting perspective that stands out to you and me and to anybody else?
Well, work ethic's the first one.
Yeah.
He protects the puck well. He reads plays and situations, right? And that also comes with protecting the puck, right? He's got a really good wrist shot, really hard, accurate wrist shot. And like I said, he's got good up and down speed. He's not he's not very fluid on his feet, but you can also improve that, right?
Yeah, you can work on that.
Yeah, and one of the things, so I always do reports on these guys just because I like to do reports on these guys, and then I'll read them up in a couple of years to see how I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
And the one thing I put in one of my reports, one of the things I thought he needed to work on, just get stronger on his feet.
Yeah.
But that will also come with him becoming a man.
Yes,
and you would know
yes.
that, right?
Yeah,
Maturing
100%,
and
100%.
going through puberty and all that, right? Like, I don't think you're fully developed here at your 21.
No,
or something
listen, we both know, the kid's a great player, but when the real boys come in and play, it's
Yeah.
a different story again.
Yep.
I have Ryan McAllister is one of my guys, and he's a very skilled guy. And I think he's still actually up with Florida in the
Yeah, so
exhibition
I
league.
had Ryan. Yeah, I had Ryan.
You had Ryan?
I had him for 2 years. Yeah.
in Double A.
No,
Triple?
A. Yeah. So I had
How
him,
was he there?
He was skilled. But
I want to use him as an example right now.
So
yeah.
he was skilled, but he was just small. He hadn't grown yet.
No.
And
But you could see you're going, wow, this guy's skilled.
Yeah, and I cut
Was
him.
it like, wow, this guy's skilled, or was it like he's pretty skilled?
We used to call him Don Ashman, who helped me out. Don was an older guy. Don's son Matt played for the Knights.
Yeah.
And so Don, we used to call him Sauce because he
Ashman, I used to train him.
Yeah, Matt. Yeah, you
Matt.
were trained Matt. Yeah. So we used to call him Sauce because he'd do these little great saucer passes. But Ryan was tiny. And so when we went to we won the OHFs that year in Major Pee Wee, and I think his parents knew that the writing was kind of on the wall, and so I cut him. And you know what? I don't want to take credit. It was probably the best thing that happened to him.
100%.
Because he went down, played at a level that was probably more suitable for him, and then he went up in Major Bantam and played for Elgin AAA, and then he went back to London, and they probably should have kept him that year, but they didn't. And then his dad called me and said, "Can he come try out for you?" But I'm like, I just took the McElwain kid, Kathy McElwain's son, Carter, who had came
Pretty
from
good?
yeah, and he was good from that year. Yeah, a great shot. And so I was like,
A great skater, probably.
yeah, very good skater. Transition and pivoting. Oh, he was really good. And I'm like, Brian, I said, I don't want you to come out and pay the fee to whatever, come out and try out, and for me just to
You're good like that.
I had the team picked, right?
Yeah.
And then he went and played AA, and then he's just kind of progressively gotten better, but he grew. And so the funny thing is you look back at that 01 team I had, and all those kids that at the time, minor Bantam, that I took in front of him, and aside from Suzuki and Millman, he's
like right there.
He's the one that's playing for hockey.
I talked to Brian McCabe, who's with the Florida Panthers. I talked to him like during the summertime, and we were talking about Ryan, and he said he's so skilled. Like he goes, they didn't get drafted. He obviously just signed, right? He was a free agent, but he was comparing them to their first round pick from either this year or last year, and he goes, he's like just as good. He goes, just Ryan has to learn some things still. He's still like growing, like maturing as a player.
Yep.
And, he has to continue to work on his fitness and become stronger, faster, and stuff like that.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, 100%. He's a very natural, like it just comes to him, right? But laser beam shot, skates well.
Yep.
Unbelievable hockey IQ in the offensive zone.
Very. So I got a call from a scout and that asked me about him. So I know you coached him. I know you had him. And as always, I said, Ryan was always the first kid in line in drills.
Always.
And he always wanted to be on the ice.
Wow.
And his work ethic was off the charts.
Yeah.
And, he struggled that second year in Pee Wee for me. And it was because I think, we had Mason Howard on the team. And Mason was my height.
He's a man.
Right?
Yeah.
And we won the OHFs that year. And as good as we were, there was no body contact that year. But we had some big kids, some kids that had started to mature and hit puberty and all those things, right? And Ryan wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so those things happen, right?
No, 100%. But at the end of the day, the cream rises to the crop. It will always, I always say this, it happens in the NFL, everywhere else. You look and you go, this guy's good, but nah. And then all of a sudden he gets good and you're like, okay, there he is. He's there. Right?
Never gave up though either,
No,
right?
he went into the American Hockey League right after he left college hockey.
Yep.
And you saw his stats. He was like, I don't know, 6 or 7 points in 5 games.
Yeah. People don't
He just jumped right into their team.
Which you don't see happen a lot, right?
No.
You don't see that happen a lot. And good on him. Right?
100%. Ryan's a great guy.
He's a great guy, and you know what? I'm very happy for him. And
100%.
it's just again, it's a testament to your work ethic. And
yes,
when I'm talking to these kids, and sometimes I'll have teams bring me out just to kind of talk to kids and go over what I look for and what's expected. And I always say work ethic. It's one of those things that you don't need to be good at. You just got to do it.
Yeah. Right? So we were talking about that earlier. I told you I'd swing back to it. It's like because all these parents and that get hung up on points.
Yeah.
Ryan Rubrick scores points. He's just that guy. But there's guys who, and listen, Ryan's my guy. Like he's been with us for a couple of years, and he's going to be, I think, a great player. But there's some guys who look at, they're more of a checking role or a grinder role, and it's funny because these teams, I think, I could be wrong, are not just like if a guy's playing on the third line, they're like, oh, I'm on the third line, I'm never going to get seen. That's not true.
No.
Right?
No.
They might want you as a third liner. From you playing a third liner, but that's not true, right?
No, not the slightest, no.
Because I'm looking, I'm going, there's a lot of pressure from parents. You and I know that. You've been a coach, so you know at a different level than I do, right? I'm sure phones have been ringing at different times. And
it's happened, yeah.
You got to stay out of it, man. You got to stay out of it. You got to let the coach, no matter if he's good or bad or whatever he is, because the scout's going to go and ask the coach.
And I went down and a good friend of mine and I kind of started our own little hockey thing. We call it Heads Up Hockey, Brendan Heffernan and I.
Yep.
And we just go out there and we run a lot of systems types of drills. But we'll go down and talk to the kids. And my message was funny. Before I let those kids down in Windsor, because we put a spring team together and went down and played a couple tournaments. And we won the first one we won, so it was great. Not to brag.
It's good. No, you guys did good.
Yeah, so it was kind of being back and coaching again, so it felt good. But anyways, the last message I said, listen, go out and have a good year, work hard. Regardless if you agree or not with your coach, just listen to what they say and just work hard, right?
Yeah,
it's 1 year, lots of things are going on. They're in high school, some might have other sports.
100%.
And the one thing I used to say, so when you're a coach, you always have a parent meeting. And I would always tell the parents is, I've got to earn their respect as much as they've got to earn mine, right?
Yep.
Right. So it's a two-way street. And, and I always tell the parents too, I said, you're more than welcome to contact me, but just make it worth something, right?
Yeah,
like
it can't be just like every time like he forgot a point or he forgot a goal,
Yeah.
you're getting a phone call, right?
Yeah. And you know what? Like we laugh about it too. Some of us scouts, some of the guys will be like, oh, this person's, got this many points. There's no way they can have that many points. Because when we were coaching, I don't know what it's like now, you could always the coaches would have
do
to
whatever
fill
you
it
want.
in. Yeah,
Yeah.
the coaches would fill it in.
Yeah.
So we'd get the odd email saying, oh, okay, I noticed the game sheet, my son didn't get an assist, or I should have had assist. And funny story, we had one.
Oh, I love that. I can't wait to hear this one.
We had one parent that called us or emailed my assistant because he took care of it, and he forwarded the email on to me. It said, my son should have had an assist. He didn't get an assist on that goal. And I said, no, because he doesn't play penalty kill. And when we were short, it was a shorthanded goal. So I said, he doesn't play penalty kill, so there was no way he was on there. And then it was video.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, I want to be fair.
I got to watch this.
So I went back and why he wasn't even on the ice.
No, you're like, you stick to doing your job and I'll
Yeah.
stick to doing my job.
But again, and I tell kids this, I'm like, it's not like I'm here to watch you play.
Yeah.
And if you score, that's great. But I want to see you more or less generating scoring chances and knowing where to go on the ice.
Are you going in the right spots?
Exactly.
Right? Are you finishing your checks? Are you doing stuff like that?
Like the goals will come. It's the old adage, right? If you're getting scoring chances, you're doing something right.
Yes.
Something's going to come from that, right?
Because you'll know that player at the next level. If you go, okay, he's not scoring. Maybe the guy on his line can't finish. He's setting you up. But if I put him with Ryan Rubrick, he's going to finish.
So, and a great story that I was watching the Leafs and Habs play last night, and people are right on that Slafkovsky. And like, oh, you get first overall pick, he's not, blah, blah, blah. But there was 2 or 3 plays I rewound where he set the guy up, and the guy couldn't score.
Wasn't his fault.
So he could have had 3 or 4.
You guys see that.
He had 1 assist, but he could have had 3 or 4, right? Again, it's situational. Right, like I could go out and play with Connor Bedard, and I may get myself.
You're going to get a point.
Yeah, and I may not play. I may play with the fourth line, and I may never get a point.
No,
right. Again, it's situational. So, and we look at that. I look at lineups and who guys are playing with, and I take that into consideration. Obviously, when I'm grading and evaluating players.
So, what's your advice for like coaches switch lines around? Mm-hmm. They try to balance lines out. I know a lot of times people read into that. Parents, players, there's obviously a purpose behind that a lot of times. It's whatever the coach thinks. Like, you're going to go to 10 different coaches and have 10 different things that they think that. What's your advice to the player? All of a sudden he looks and he goes, I was with this guy, and I was on the first line, and now I'm on this guy, and I'm on the second line. Oh, my God, they're not going to see me. What's your advice to that?
Well, one, they'll see you.
They'll see you. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. No. Like last year, Robrick and Weir would be on the same line, and then they'd be off on the same line, and there'd be a new guy playing on the wing.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
No, and when I would change lines up or look to shift lines, it was to generate something positive.
Yeah.
A goal or defend a lead.
Or a strategy to beat the other team, right?
Exactly. It was to win. And people always say this, and to defend coaches or guys that coach, it's about development, but coaches want to win too.
Yes.
There's pressure to win.
100%.
There's pressure from the organization. There's pressure from the parents. There's pressure from the kids.
So there is pressure from the organization. 100%.
I mean, if I went in there and when I took that 0-1 team and had I lost in the Alliance finals or maybe even lost in the first round, I probably don't get that team back.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe it was rightfully so, depending on what happens, right? I mean,
it happens in the NHL all the time. Guys get fired after 20, 30 games.
Exactly. It'll happen this year again at all levels, right?
Guys who are elite coaches get fired.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So there is that pressure to win, and at least when I changed lines, it was strategy, right?
Yeah.
And going back to McAllister, and I got to give my assistant. We were in the OHFs. We blew a 2-goal lead. McAllister had sat for a good chunk of the third period. Didn't think he was having a good game, and my assistant coach came up to me and said, "You got to play him." And I was like, "No, we got to go. We're going with 2 lines.
Yeah,
we got to
go hard. We got to win
overtime."
Yeah.
Well, finally, he convinced me to put him on the ice. Puts him on the ice. He gets a puck. We go down and score.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's Ryan, right? That's Ryan for you.
So he gets an assist on the game-winning goal, and we're the first team in the Alliance to ever win Pee Wee OHFs. And Ryan started, and it was with a back check. Something at the time.
Something defensive.
It started right in our zone. A guy came down. It was a 2-on-1. Mason Millman made a great stick check. Ryan's there, turns the puck up the ice. Jeffrey Bird, Jaden
Yeah.
Kruger, in the back of the net.
And, I wanted to ask you about that also. Is like playing defense creates offense. And
I used to say
people
that all
don't
the
get
time.
it.
Yep.
They don't get that, man.
I used to say it all. I said it all the time. Yeah.
If you go in and back check and take a puck from somebody and all of a sudden, bang, you're in a transition to go the other way, or you may be another situation that you could kind of explain, like, these guys this is important for them to know this stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, I can't stand to watch guys that don't back check.
No.
I mean, because I look at it from a coach. I mean, if I was that coach, I wouldn't be too happy.
No, I mean, it's part of the game. What do you find the biggest challenges, like, as a coach? I'm not scout now, trying to get someone to understand that. And it's, I would assume, unless you're banging off a ton of points, like, let's say rubric, you got to be doing it.
Oh, for sure.
And how can that affect you in your draft rankings? Quite a bit, right?
I used to say to the kids, the 2 years I coached U16 and Elgin, I used to look at the kids and I'd say, the better he plays, the better chance he gets drafted,
Right.
vice versa.
Right.
Right? And you try to make it a team mentality, right? And you want guys to buy into that. And then you always, at every team, you get a couple really good leaders and you can kind of lean on them. And you're like, okay, you got to get these guys working hard and whatnot. But it's such an important part of the game. It's like you said, good defense creates offense.
Right, 100%. Now, if a player, I notice, a lot of guys are APing at this level. You ever go watch a junior B game?
Yep.
You do. So you watch that too.
Yeah, the one I went to last year, Rubric was playing. And there's two twins. There's a set of twins out of Leamington. I can't remember the last name.
Oh, yeah, those two brothers that were dead. One got drafted.
And they were on NHL Central Scouting list. So there's 4 or 5 NHL scouts there.
Yeah, and that doesn't happen that often from junior B.
No.
But like we said, if you're good enough, they'll do that.
And they'll find you, yeah, right. And Rubric had a good game. Ryan ended up scoring on a power play goal. And, so we go to those games. What happens is a coach or someone will let me know, saying, hey, this player is going up to play junior B for this team, and then I'll forward it off to Daryl, my boss, and he'll let all the 20 teams know. So all the scouts in the area can go take a look at this player.
So you would go, will you also communicate with general managers from OHL teams?
Yeah, that's the great thing about my job. So technically I work for all 20 teams. So, people always ask,
every GM.
Yeah, I don't talk to every GM, but I get some GMs that'll call me. I get some head scout guys that'll call me. I'll just get some other scouts that'll call me. And the great thing is if you're a scout from Barrie and you're a scout from Saginaw, you guys may talk, you may know each other, but you're not going, oh, this is what I think of this guy. I'll get a lot of guys come to me and say, okay,
they're just going to ask your opinion.
Yeah, ask me my opinion, and it makes for great conversations. And when I go to the London games, there's usually 2 or 3 scouts that I sit with all the time. Carpool with some of these guys now, and you form a lot of good relationships.
These guys put a lot of time in. I mean, I know they love doing it, but they don't make a ton of money.
No, yeah, exactly.
They do it because they love to do it.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, and there's an alliance scout for all 20 teams have their own alliance scouts. Some of the GTHL team, OHL teams have.
So you get some GTHL so will the coaches ever contact you of the minor midget teams or not really?
Once in a while, yeah. Once in a while, yeah. The one, the Kitchener coach.
What do they want to know?
Just they'll ask me opinions on guys or what I think or what I'll think of their player.
Like their own player or whatever,
their
right?
own player, Or they'll just fill me in if their player's injured, and then I'll kind of make a conversation or start a conversation with that and stuff like that.
So sometimes a player might have an injury, you're like, hey, he's a good player, man. You're not going to get a good look at him because he's injured. You need to know that.
Yeah.
Because you would never know sometimes.
Sometimes it'll be updated on RinkNet, and they'll just kind of send you out an email and said, hey, this player from the London Junior Knights is hurt, and day to day or whatever. You usually don't find out what it is exactly.
You just have an idea that there's something wrong there,
so that's where you'll kind of communicate with the coach and kind of say, hey, how long, or do you know what it is?
That's interesting. It's kind of a little bit off topic, but I'm like, I think 2 years ago I was playing pro line, just we had doing something for fun. I don't usually gamble or anything like that, but nothing for big bucks. But I would go and because my buddy's like, you got to go and look at the injury report. An injury report in football is significant. It's huge, right?
Yeah.
And you look at it and go, okay, this guy's playing, but he's got an ankle injury. So when you're doing a bet, let's say you're going to pick that team and he's a key player, you're going, is he going to be able to produce, that much if he's got an ankle injury? So then I'm sitting there and I'm going, I'm a bad gambler too, by the way, right? And I'm like, all right, they're not going to win today because this guy goes out and rushes for 140 yards. I'm like, all right, I'm done gambling. But so now we're getting into. I think you guys probably divide things into 3 different sections. I would assume, like kind of like preseason, mid, and then playoffs, OHL Cup.
Yep.
Guys getting to OHL Cup, you've been monitoring. He's been getting better and better. Lights up playoffs, like in terms of not just points, doing a job for the team. And then his stock obviously goes up. Mm-hmm. How significant of a role does it play for a player or a team if they don't make it to the OHL Cup?
You know what? It can hurt you. It can a little bit, but there's still the consolation championships and finals in the Alliance. And I know the GTHL is usually done. The Alliance used to be done right by the OHL Cup, but it's not anymore, obviously, because of COVID. They've kind of changed things. It does hurt you a little bit, right? I mean, guys, because you're going to the OHL Cup, and it's the cream of the crop for that year, right? Yeah. And, a kid named Brady Martin, who went third.
Oh, yeah, he was good.
Yeah, to the Sioux last year.
What a worker that guy
was. Well, I watched the game at the OHL Cup. They're playing the Marlies, and they beat them. He scored all 3 goals.
I was on the other side of the ring. I heard the story.
Oh, my God. And the one goal he scored, the guy was right on his back. And he just looked like he carried the guy. Like, literally carried the guy.
You know what? There's a guy, we're talking about compete level.
Yeah, off the charts.
That guy will bite your legs off, too.
Off the charts,
Another guy. Like, I was watching him, and I was going, who's this guy? Like, he really brought it, like, near the... I think he was good anyway.
Yep.
But did he surprise you? Was there a guy like that went, okay, I kind of got him rated in the 5th round or 4th round. All of a sudden, he just does that, and you go...
I would say for him, that was him last year. I mean, he wasn't rated that low. You're thinking, okay, probably late 1st round.
Okay.
But for me, it's always like, I got to see these guys play against the Toronto kids, the top kids, some of the top American kids, right? And as you just kind of watch them go through the year, and then they beat London in the finals last year, and London had more talent, more skill. On paper, they probably should have won, but we've seen that story 1,000 times in any sport, right?
They got smoked in the Game 7 there.
Exactly, yeah. And he just brung it, and then you watch his team go to the OHL Cup. And
he brought his team up.
He carried the team.
100%.
Yeah, he carried the team, right? And, so in respect to your question, you look at that, and you're like, okay, maybe a couple of kids from that Waterloo team, maybe they get drafted in 10th or 11th round, but seeing them how he played
now 6, 7.
Yeah, it kind of bumps them up, right?
So I watched the OHL Cup. I was there watching in London because my son was coaching. We just kind of went to cheer him on and stuff. caught a few other games, and you've coached in the Alliance. There's always that stigma of GTHL better. Obviously, bigger population base, so for sure they're going to have more consistent players that are good. But I remember. London, it was a situation, I could be explaining it incorrectly, you probably know what happened, where they won a certain game, then the playoff round came, and they should have been playing this team, and all of a sudden they're playing this team. Yeah, does that always happen to the Alliance guys, or what?
It could happen, yeah. I don't know what happened. Yeah, there was something funny about
it.
They
were pissed about it.
Yeah, I know they were upset. I don't know what happened.
It was like they were supposed to play like Vaughan instead of the Junior Canadians or something like that. But they just said, no, you're going to play Junior Canadians, right? And actually, that game was a good game. I don't know if you saw that one.
Yes, obviously, yeah.
They had the lead, and then they kind of tied it up.
Yep.
And then they just kind of fell apart. But that can be very frustrating. Is why do they have it in friggin' Toronto all the time? Like, why can't this tournament be somewhere else?
No idea.
It's never been anywhere else.
No, I don't think so. No.
I know it's the hub. Obviously, Toronto's a hub.
Yeah, I wonder. I think it's because of the arena that plays Scotiabank Pond has the 4 rinks for the 4 pads. They have the room for the scouts, and I wonder if it's just because they can bring everybody in.
It's more of a central location, I think. Right, for
and I think
Ottawa and
prior to a few years ago when Ottawa went U16 and U17 or 18, sorry. Now Ottawa's back in it. You're getting all those Ottawa teams too coming down. Right?
Yeah.
So it'll make, and then it's great that those Ottawa teams are back because there's a bunch of them at the.
So you guys finish the OHL Cup. You go back meetings again.
Yep.
How many meetings? 1, 2?
A lot of it's Zoom meetings now. A lot of conversations.
That's good. Thank God.
Yeah,
for sure. Because I'm sure you bolting down they all your expenses are covering mileages and this and that's all.
I can't say enough. Food. Yeah, the OHL. Yeah. Nice evenings.
They don't make you eat hot dogs. You can actually have a dinner.
Yeah, we have good dinners. Yeah,
dinners in the hotel.
All that's covered. Yeah. They treat us really well. Yeah, I can't say enough about how well they treat us.
You met Dave Branch.
Yeah, we're in there on draft day with him.
Is he still there? Is he?
This is his last year.
This is it. And who's going to step up? Or are they
not sure. They haven't announced
got to
it
vote
yet.
that.
Yeah, they've got to bring somebody in. Yeah, and Ted Baker, who was the VP, he retired last year.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it'll be a bunch of different.
Does
changes.
Dave have any? And I met Dave, and you know what? This guy's really smart, eh?
Coached against him, yeah.
Okay, so Dave comes to London the year of the 2005 London Junior Night team, like the all-century team that I was a part of that, and walks in the change room. I don't even know who this guy is. Walks over and goes, "Hey, Spiro, how you doing?" I didn't even know how he knew my name, and he was going around the room. And he was talking to guys like he knew them already.
Yeah.
Like, is he in on what you guys do? Like the final selections? Does he give his voice? Nothing.
No.
Just your crew of guys.
Yeah. And our boss, Daryl Woodley's our boss, and he kind of Daryl, like that's his full-time job. And he was in Pittsburgh a couple weekends ago, and then he was in Toronto, and then he'll be in London this weekend, obviously, and he'll be up in Ottawa, Sudbury area. Like, he's on the road.
Does he make the final calls?
He'll make the final one, yeah.
So you guys will bring yours, you look at it.
We all talk about it.
Yeah, you all talk it.
We'll
and
do
he's
it
really
together.
good, I would assume. Like,
very
amazing.
Yeah, because you know what? Obviously, breaking in, you want to be able to get an opportunity to scout. But I don't think I'd want to be with an association or with a team if you didn't have any say.
No.
It'd almost be pointless,
No
right?
way. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so even my first year, I remember, my first year with Central Scouting, we're at our first meeting at the Silver Stick, and we're doing reports, and I was just like, no, I don't like that player. And he looks at me and says, well, why? I was like, I'm trying to look at my notes.
Yeah, I'll tell you.
Yeah, exactly, right? So I was just like a bit of an eye-opener, like, okay, so you got to be prepared. But he's really good about that, really, really good.
He must be a good hockey mind, like I would assume.
Yeah, he played for Barrie, and then he was assistant GM with the Barrie Colts, and then he's been doing this, I think, 13, 14 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, so he's been around a long time.
So, okay, final process. You guys all get in the room. There's one more day. Like, does he take it from there at the end and go through everything?
Yeah, well,
has his own scouting reports.
Yeah, so
or are they all based off of what you guys wrote down?
A bit of both, yeah, a bit of both. So what we'll do is late January, we'll do detailed reports on our AA and A rated players. So guys from the first up into
how does that work? So an A player is
AA.
AA is what?
1 or 2 rounds. We think they'll go
like
on 1
round
or 2.
1, 2.
Yeah, and then 3, 4, and 5 is A, and then 6, 7, 8, 9 is B.
Yeah,
and then from 10 to 15 is C.
Okay.
Right,
okay.
so that's how we kind of rank them, right?
That's how you categorize.
Yeah, so we'll do detailed reports on our AA and A players by December.
So the teams have access to this list now.
So what happens is
like the OHL teams,
the OHL GMs,
yep,
and head scouts will get them, and they can do what they want.
They cross-reference. They can do whatever they want. Yeah.
9 times out from scouts that I've talked to, they don't give them just to the regular scouts.
No,
because they want to go look at their scout and then look at what we're saying and compare and go. Because if something's off, they'll be like, okay, well, why is it off? Right.
Yeah.
So maybe they'll go back and question him, or they'll call me and just kind
right.
of say, hey, what's up with this player? What do you think? Right. So that's kind of the way it works.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to be funny or anything like that, but my opinion, I'm going to give you my opinion on what I see from like rounds 10 to 15, right?
Sure.
And you guys go out, you do your scouting. There's been some situations in the OHL where there's been people or teams in trouble for doing things. My opinion would be, and I'm not sure if that'll ever change, but they got to respect your guys' judgment. The OHL's been around for a long time. They know what they're doing. They're very intelligent. They got to, I think from that rounds 10, in my opinion, rounds 10 to 15, it should be up to you guys to make those final calls. And I just hate, because there's players that deserve to be drafted. They don't get drafted. At the end of the day, the clubs pick who they want.
Yep.
Right? You could go and have a guy in the 4th round, and they could take him in the 8th round.
Yeah.
Or, vice versa. But I think that and it doesn't happen much in pro level. I think that there's, people who know people. This happens in life in general. But I would love to see at some point that stop, because it's happened a few times. And I don't really expect you to comment on it too much. I don't think it's pretty transparent. It's been in the news and in lots of different places. But I think at some point, those early round guys, I think they're going to go. They're going to be at those, high picks and that. But those later rounds, it just seems like some guys are getting picked that have no business being there. And I kind of hope, me being an athlete my whole life and being involved in hockey, that's what I would love to see change.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if it will. At the end of the day, like you said, it's like, hey, here's what we got. This, you guys do, you run with it from there, right?
Yeah, it's tough for those kids that don't get drafted that feel they should have, right? And I've had a couple parents that I know that have asked me to call their kid, the child that didn't get drafted.
Yeah.
And I would just say, just keep working hard.
It's not the end of the world.
And there's a U18 draft too as well. And so, I mean, there's always opportunities, right? I think, well, look at Ryan McAllister, right? Like
100%.
Ty Glover too. Ty Glover was drafted in the 15th round of Saginaw and then actually ended up playing junior B and then went and played major midget and then went to Buffalo.
Amazing.
And
I had Ryan, Ty, when he was younger.
Yeah.
And this guy was like a bag of bones. But his work ethic,
now,
his work ethic was amazing.
Yeah.
Like he just never gave up. And I thought, like, I'm going, okay, he's never going to play.
Yeah.
He's never going to play. I thought that in my head 100%. And I know the dad, we grew up together and stuff like that. But then all of a sudden I'm like, holy smokes, he's been drafted. I mean, not drafted, a free agent signing. Was any free agent signing?
Free agent in Pittsburgh,
I'm like, this is incredible. But there's just, you said, there's another guy where he just kept going.
Yeah.
Because everybody thinks, I think, that their hockey's over if they don't get drafted. We all know that even though those guys that get drafted, how many guys, even the first year of being drafted, the first rounders are going to probably play.
Yep.
Second rounder, possibly.
Yeah, depending on the team situation.
The rest of the guys are all in the same boat that you're going to be in.
Yep, exactly.
And, we know that there's only 2 cards for like junior B and, junior A. And, you don't get a card for that either. But you know what? You play major midget, you do well. Again, we go back to Ryan McAllister. Goes to Brooks Bandits after he leaves Kamoka.
Did very well.
This statistic's going to blow your mind. I don't know the exact points, but his dad was telling me, he came by the gym the other day, just tell me how Ryan did out there in Florida. And he goes, between the regular season games, playoffs, and the cup that they play at the end of it, I'm not sure what it's called.
Yeah, I forget what it's called. I watched it on TV, though.
200 points.
It doesn't surprise me. Because I think his regular season, he was like 160-something, 170.
Just like, then he goes to college, and you're thinking, okay, this is the big boys.
Yeah.
Does it again.
It's the same thing, yeah.
Yeah. So, I think that the hockey's not over. There's guys that play junior hockey, start at 17, let's say, after the 2 16-year-old card deals done.
Yep.
Head in, do okay. Next year, do okay. 19 years old, better. 20 years old, lit it up. All of a sudden, he's getting looked at by university, Division I schools, go that route.
Yep.
Like, your hockey's not over.
Far from it, yeah.
Right? And hey, it can be a hard pill to swallow when you don't get drafted.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
it is, because
especially when you're watching some of your teammates and you know what I mean? Like,
100%.
It can be tough, and guys that you grew up with and...
Yeah, it happened to Mason. Look how good Mason was, an amazing hockey player. But, I kept telling him to work. And then he, it's unfortunate about his hips and that he had surgery, but he went to Europe and he signed a pro contract at 20 years old.
There you go, yeah.
And I think that if he would have stayed there and kept playing, he would have made his way up. But he just couldn't, right? Just because of the pain in his legs. But I always tell guys, I go, it is not the end of the world.
No.
You can, this happens across the world everywhere.
Yep.
You mature, your brain matures. Where do you think the player gets his best hockey sense or his comfort level gets to a point where he's developed at the highest he'll be? Is it 19, 20? Is it 18? Where do you think that
I would think it'd be in his 20s.
20s.
Right? And that's why you look at some of these guys that just continue to develop, right?
Yeah.
There's even in the NHL, there's so few guys that go in and play. Like even last year's draft, was it Montreal had the kid up Sikorsky for 30 games until he got hurt. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 other players played 1 or 2 games, right? This year, Bedard will play. I mean, he's exception, right? He's
exception.
A phenomenal player, right?
Yeah.
So there's very few guys that come into the league at 18, 19. And the OHL is kind of the same thing too, right?
Same thing.
You'll have, maybe 20 16-year-olds play, 25 maybe. And how many will be game breakers? You look at the kids that even play for the Knights.
No, 100%.
Right? A lot of the time, because they're always a good team, right? They develop.
Yeah.
Right? They'll come in and they'll play and they'll have a couple good or they'll have a couple good games here or not, and then they'll watch for a bit, right? But they're learning.
Yeah. The hunters know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They if they think that you're going to take a little longer to develop, they'll make sure that they do it right.
Right, yeah.
And, I'm going to use Brendan Faulkner as an example. right? Signs with Peterborough this
Yeah,
year.
played Elgin, yeah.
Didn't get drafted in minor midget. Got drafted in major midget.
Yep.
And this year, so last year he had a good training camp in Peterborough. Did really well in his fitness testing. That goes back again this year. Does everything all over again. They're making him grind it out right to the end. They're going to make him go play all the games. Like, they didn't sign him yet. And at the same time, I don't even know if you know this, but he was, and he wasn't a lie, he showed me his text messages. Los Angeles Kings were looking at him. The scout was. Doesn't mean he's going to play on the team or anything like that. He had 2 NHL teams kind of like what they see. Maybe it's a long-term thing for him.
Yep.
But, there's the other situation, right?
Right,
It could happen anytime. So, I think that this is really good. I wanted to get this out to my clients, to my people.
For sure.
Because this is a big year. Mm-hmm. There's so much hype.
Lots of pressure.
Right? A lot of pressure. Yeah. You as a coach, I want to kind of touch on one more subject. Advice for parents. Like, listen, these are young kids.
Yep.
Some of them can handle, the parent saying something to them after a game or whatever it may be, kind of being tough on them, and others can't.
Yep.
You got a lot of experience in that. What is your message, like, for a parent? To me, it's like, hey, sit back, enjoy the year. There's being times where you're going to bite your nails off.
Exactly, yep.
But, like, it's going to happen if it's going to happen.
And that'd be my exact advice. Right. And going to that, back to that, what you're talking about, there's every year coaching, you got to know your team, right? So every year coaching, there'd be kids that you can kind of lean on and say, like, smarten up.
Right.
And some that you couldn't say that to because they just couldn't handle it for whatever reason, right? You have to handle the kids in different situations, right? But for parents, I was talking to one the other day and I just said, listen, I said, enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
How quick it goes.
Yeah, right? You got to be positive in front of your kid.
And that's the thing too, is to be positive, right? Because there's going to be games. And again, I say it too all the time, is I don't go and watch the junior Knights play one game and make my decision.
No, you make a ton of games you go watch.
Exactly, right? For any team, right? And I know I'm not the only scout that does it that way, right? So,
and he's going to have a bad game.
Oh,
he's going to have 15 bad games, but you're still like, as long as you're working and you got the skill and you have the mind for the game, you're going to get found.
Yeah, and just keep working hard.
Yeah.
And just so, again, positive.
100%. There's nothing worse than someone being on a kid like that and him. You know what happens when you grip the stick too tight?
Oh yeah, then you just
don't. You're done.
Yeah.
The pucks are bouncing off your sticks, and we're chuckling about it, but at the same time, it's like, hey, this is like just a kid.
Yeah. Oh, exactly what they are.
This is just a kid.
And I always say too, they've got
a 16-year-old.
They got pressure of being at high school. Yeah. They may have other sports, and even if they don't, then they have training, and they have their schoolwork, and they're thinking about the future, and then obviously hockey and everything else going around them, and now there's social media and all those other things to.
James,
I feel for these kids even when I coach them because I knew there's just so much going on in their minds. Right?
100%.
And I think as a parent. Like my daughter came home last week and she got up 3 days in a row and at 7:30, and she doesn't like to get up in the mornings.
She's not a morning person.
Not a morning person.
I'm not going to be honest.
Got up at 7:30 and went and tried out in volleyball as a grade 7, trying out for the 7 and 8 team and didn't make it.
Yeah.
And I was nothing but positive. And I said, you know what? It happens. I said, you're a grade 7. I said, if you want to work hard, your mom and I will put you in a volleyball camps you go to. We'll put you in that. You can work harder.
Yep.
But it's up to you. But you know what? I'm very proud of you for going out and waking up early and trying.
100%.
And I didn't watch the tryouts. I don't know how good or bad she performed or if she should have made it. I mean.
Or, James, you go into a situation where you're down to the wire, like OHL Cup. There's only going to be a few guys playing at that point. Yep. At that point, don't get pissed off. Even if your kid isn't good, there's guys that probably still get drafted high, and then it happens to them.
Oh, for sure.
But at that time, the coach is just thinking, I need this to happen.
Yep.
This is what he thinks.
Yep.
Not what you think.
Yep.
What he thinks. And then all of a sudden, you're like, whether successful or doesn't, I just think at the end of the day, I also, the pressure's hard. I see. And I don't recommend, much more action going on besides your practices and your training. Mm-hmm. When you're playing minor midget, you're playing major Bantam and stuff like that. Go play your high school things and do whatever you're doing. But I got to think you believe the same way, man. Like these kids are getting up at 6 a.m. They go to school. Some of them are going in for a morning skate. Sometimes, I'm like, holy smokes, guys. Then they're going to me after. Then they're going to their practice. And they got to have recovery days in there too.
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing at this level, you've probably chosen to play hockey, and if that's what you do. And I know there's kids that still do other sports in the summer or whatnot. And a funny story is when I had that 01 team, and they were really young at the time, a lot of them were really good soccer players.
I bet.
So it was like I said, every spring or every fall, I'd go and be like, okay, we get the soccer out of them, right? Because they'd be so used to playing soccer. We got to get them in hockey mode. But again, they were 12, 13, 14.
Yes, that's
time,
different.
Right? But now, if you're coming into this year, that's.
I think it's like a poker game, man. You're going all in now, and that's it, right? It's like, you got to be able to be fresh for a game of hockey.
Yeah.
When the body's stressed out and tired because you're overdoing it, you think more is better. It's not at times. In the in-season, no. In the off-season, you can handle a little bit more. You've got, a lot of these kids don't work. They just come in, they train 4 or 5 times a week, and then they're done after an hour and a half. So, you could probably handle a little bit more. But, during the season, man, it's a grind, man.
Oh, it is. And again, you look at it, you're 2 practices a week at least.
Yeah, at least.
And then if you're doing dry land training or other things like fitness and working out, and then you've got at least 1 or 2 games. And you look at some of these teams, right? So there was 4 Alliance teams at the Titans last weekend, and 3 or 4 of those teams are going to be in London this weekend. And none of them are from London. None of them. It's not Elgin or London. Neither of those teams were at the Titans tournament. So you've got Waterloo, and then you've got Chatham that's coming up here. So that's a lot of hockey.
Do any pro scouts talk to you about players?
I've had a couple, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I've had a couple players. Yeah, and from what I understand is prior to COVID, there was actually some NHL teams that had guys that were. And I've seen NHL scouts.
Mason came back from Sweden, and Mike Bullard, who played in the NHL, I remember that name. They run Caledonia, and Mason was in a lot of pain, but they were like, look, come up, we'll make it worth your while. And he went up and played. There was like NHL scouts there. There was like not every practice, but a couple times. Mason says, holy smokes, right? So,
you see him at especially the OHL Cup. You see him sometimes at the OHL Cup. And
why do they go that early? Is it part of their job or no?
I think so. I'm sure they're just kind of going out and doing some pre scouting. I guess, right?
Yeah. Just maybe someone who's caught their eye a little bit.
Yeah, because they'll see the top end guys. They'll see him in the OHL the next year. When
it's not. Does the NHL have their own central scouting like you guys do, or no?
They have their own NHL central.
They
scouting.
do. So they have an Oh yes, they do. What am I talking about?
Right. So it's basically
the same thing, but at the next level.
Yeah.
Is your goal to get to that?
I mean, that'd be great. Yeah.
You're happy right now?
And I'm happy. Yeah, continue to learn. Like every time I go to the arena, I want to learn something new. But to work full time in the NHL would be amazing.
Oh, it would be awesome.
Oh yeah,
for sure. No
question. I mean, to me, the arena is like a second home, right?
You know what?
I love being at it.
Exactly. To do what you do, you have to love it.
Oh yeah, you do. Yeah, James, you have to love the drive too.
You, Bud, I've known you a long time. I haven't talked to you in a while.
Yeah.
Very passionate. I really appreciate you coming on the show tonight, man. This is some pretty valuable information for these kids. And Bud, I wish you the best of luck, and we'll be seeing you around the rinks.
For sure.
Right, buddy?
Thank you.
You're welcome, man. No problem.